Ladies and germs, welcome to another episode of Analyzing Tucker, and I have with me my Robin to Batman, or
That'll work.
that'll work.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Holy cow!
It's got a cape.
Robin was like he was like holy something. That was a funny part about Robin because he had a. Holy politics.
Batman, yeah. Yeah, holy politics, Batman.
How you been?
Good, good. How about you?
Good, good. I can't complain.
Good.
So, are you ready for another episode?
Absolutely.
We're about to watch an episode. This will be episode number 4. And again, we kind of want to bring this point every time, is that we are asking you to support Tucker and go and see these and share them, these videos, by going to Twitter, or X as it's called now, and look for them under Tucker Carlson. And they are so, we love them, and that's why we bring him on CTA, because I think that it's not only what he says, but I think analyzing it and going into deeper about what is being said. It's the only real journalism that is being done out there today. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the journalism has died in this country. It's in the pockets of those rich men north of Richmond, as we talked about last week. So, the bottom line is that these are interesting and powerful, and you learn so much from them. This is what journalism is about.
That's right.
Opening up your eyes, your mind, to what is really happening out there. And I think the biggest mistake Fox News, or those who control Fox News, thought they could silence Tucker.
Right. When they fired him, they thought that was it.
Exactly.
Right.
And they didn't fire him. They just took his show off.
Right.
But they got him on the contract until 2025, and they figured we're going to just shut him up, like they did with Lou Dobbs.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Dobbs is still on the contract, or until recently. So he couldn't go anywhere else to do whatever he was, what he was doing, because he was stuck. He was on the contract. He didn't have the platform. He doesn't do the kind of work that Tucker does. But Tucker said, "Oh, really? I'm done with my show.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me go to Twitter, and now I'm going to have not 2 million people or 3 million people watching what I do and what I'm saying, but I'm going to have over 100 million people watching what I'm doing and what I'm saying."
Mm-hmm.
And so in this episode that we're about to watch now, he has an opportunity to kind of turn the little knife, back. He got stabbed in the back by Fox News, and then he's like fighting back, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's watch it, and then we'll be back to analyze.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. On Tuesday afternoon, the Biden administration had Donald Trump arrested. It was a pretty big news story. You may have seen it. Just before 9 p.m. that night, as part of its coverage, Fox News ran 2 live video feeds next to one another. On the right, Donald Trump addressed his supporters in New Jersey. On the left, Joe Biden spoke at an event for the Secretary General of NATO in Washington. Beneath those videos at the bottom of the screen, Fox's banner read this way, quote, "Wannabe dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested." Those words were up for less than 30 seconds, but the effect was immediate. Inside Fox, the women who run the network panicked. First, they scolded the producer who put the banner on the screen. Less than 24 hours after that, he resigned. He'd been at Fox for more than a decade. He was considered one of the most capable people in the building. He offered to stay for the customary 2 weeks, but Fox told him to clear out his desk and leave immediately. Then the company issued a public apology for the 27-second-long wannabe dictator line. Quote, "The chyron was taken down immediately," Fox's PR department said, and then added ominously it was, quote, "addressed." That was all true, but it was not enough to save Fox News from the ensuing scandal. For a time in the rest of the media, Fox's assessment of Donald Trump's arrest seemed to overshadow Trump's arrest itself. Suggesting that Biden is a dictator, declared the Washington Post, quote, "crossed the line." Alexander Vindman agreed strongly. Vindman is the perennial MSNBC guest and full-time Ukraine promoter you may remember from Russiagate. On Twitter, he demanded that the Pentagon pull Fox News from all military bases. It is, quote, absolutely unacceptable for American Forces Network to carry programming that directly, spuriously, attacks the Commander-in-Chief of American Armed Forces, Vindman wrote. In other words, Joe Biden must ban all criticism of himself because that's what non-dictators do. John Cusack went further still. For the crime of calling Biden a dictator, Fox should be shut down, wrote the 80s era movie star. Quote, the government has to take away their broadcasting license, and so on. It was all over the internet. Democrats were very, very angry. But why were they angry? If the banner on Fox was false, why the hysteria? Lies don't seem to bother anyone anymore. If some cable news producer had called Joe Biden a genius or accused him of being secretly Sudanese, would anyone be yelling about it? Would Fox News have apologized for it? Probably not. But calling Joe Biden a wannabe dictator, that stung. So you've got to wonder, if you're being honest with yourself, is Joe Biden a wannabe dictator? That question came up yesterday at the White House briefing. Here's how it went.
Last night, Fox News ran a chyron that referred to the president as a wannabe dictator, and I'm wondering if the White House has any comment on that.
So look, there are probably about 787 million things that I can say about this that was wrong about what we saw last night, but I don't think I'm going to get into it.
There's no comment the White House has on.
I think I just commented.
Oh, no comment necessary. Of course Joe Biden's not a wannabe dictator. Just because he's trying to put the other candidate in prison for the rest of his life for a crime he himself committed doesn't mean he has a totalitarian impulse. Come on, that's absurd. It takes a lot more than jailing your political rivals to earn the title wannabe dictator. That's the consensus in Washington tonight. And in some ways, for once, the consensus may be right. It is not a small thing to be a wannabe dictator. It's quite a process. There are a lot of steps. First off, there is the money. The one thing that all dictators have in common is they enrich themselves and their families, their tribe, even as the countries they govern grow steadily poorer and more desperate. They take kickbacks from businesses and from other dictators. They use the official functions of their government to funnel cash to themselves. They don't bother to hide the fruits of this. They live in garish mansions with big lawns, far from the teeming cities, even as their own citizens languish in growing poverty, in some cases literally living in tents on the street. So they don't really hide it, it's all pretty blatant. And ordinary people resent it. Of course they do, and wannabe dictators know they resent it, but they don't care. There's nothing the population can do about it in a dictatorship. It's no longer possible to fight injustice in a system like that. People can't gather in large numbers to protest the rule of the dictator. If they try that, they'll be arrested by his state security services, even years after the fact. A visit from men in body armor at the breakfast table. That happens. And if citizens persist in believing they can gather in groups to protest, they may be shot to death, a bullet to the throat. And then, just to make the humiliation complete, to make the lesson gin clear to everyone else watching, their relatives can be arrested for daring to complain that their children were killed for complaining. That actually happens in some places. Ask Ashley Babbitt's mother. Here she is in handcuffs.
Babbitt's father. You're arresting Ashley Babbitt's father.
You murdered her inside the Capitol, now you're going to arrest her?
Come out of there. 101, have a transport response.
Sidewalk.
So don't be like Ashley Babbitt's mother, much less like poor Ashley Babbitt. She's dead now. That's the message a wannabe dictator would send. And by the way, it's not just public protest that would be banned in a dictatorship. You wouldn't be allowed to complain from your own home. Unauthorized opinions expressed on the internet would be censored. Go too far, press too deep, tell too much truth, and they'll just erase your opinions. They have no choice, really. It's a matter, as they say, of trust and safety. You must trust the leader, or else you will jeopardize his safety. Not that you really can jeopardize his safety at this point. The leader has nuclear weapons, and you don't. He'll remind you of that from time to time. And in any case, you're in the process of being disarmed anyway, along with everyone else who has shown questionable loyalty to the leader. Those who support the regime can keep their weapons and use them freely, including on public transportation. That's a core civil right for them. But for those who dissent from the program, self-defense is an unaffordable privilege Turn in your guns, Mr. and Mrs. Peaceful Opposition. You're a danger to society, and we know who you are. And in fact, the wannabe dictator does know who they are because he knows everything. Technology has made him all-seeing. A report in Wired magazine just this week revealed that the highly non-dictatorial Biden administration is busy tracking the phones of millions of Americans without their knowledge and without bothering to get a warrant. And at the same time, the same non-dictatorial administration is stockpiling a massive trove of damaging information about these same Americans, to be used at some point, we are sure, for entirely noble purposes. So the administration now knows everything: where you spend your days, who you talk to, what you think, your porn habits. Not a big deal. The administration already knows what you buy, of course, because they've leaned on the big banks to turn over your confidential credit card information. Not because anyone here is a wannabe dictator, to be clear, but just because. It's nice to have that information, just in case, in the words of the Fox News PR department, a situation arises that needs to be, quote, addressed. It's all totally normal. It's not a dictatorship, okay? But in the end, the main reason you know Joe Biden is not a wannabe dictator is because he just does not fit the profile as a man. Dictators have that look. You know one when you see one. Dictators build cults of personality around themselves, and they use those cults to deny the glaringly obvious. In his later years, to name just one example, North Korean dictator Kim Il-sung developed an enormous baseball-sized tumor on the back of his neck. It was huge. It was grotesque. It was right there. You couldn't ignore it. You couldn't possibly not see it. But in North Korea, state media did ignore it. They pretended it didn't exist. And so, in some important sense, it didn't. If a tumor grows on a neck but no one acknowledges it, is it really there? Thankfully, nothing like that is happening in our country or ever will. If Joe Biden ever developed some profound physical or medical problem that was obvious to everybody, journalists would say something. This is not North Korea. We don't have state media here. If Joe Biden was, say, incapable of completing a full sentence, or mistook his sister for his wife, or suddenly started falling down in public for no reason, the New York Times would report on that and then get to the bottom of what was actually happening. That would be its duty in a free country like ours. It's not like they would cover it up. The very idea of a cover-up sounds like a conspiracy theory, a dangerous one, actually, so stop it. And by the way, if Joe Biden was a wannabe dictator, he'd have the family to match. All dictators do. Saddam Hussein had Uday and Qusay. They were princelings who lived above the law, indulging their most decadent fantasies with total confidence they would be never held to account by the police. As the sons of a dictator, they knew they could do exactly what they wanted, and so that's what they did. There's no one like that around Joe Biden. He doesn't have weird sex scandals at the heart of his family that no one in the media will ever talk about. He doesn't have a ne'er-do-well former nightclub-owning brother who's made a living for 30 years by being related to him. Not at all. That's dictator stuff. Joe Biden doesn't award ridiculous inflated titles to his relatives that the media are then required to take seriously. He doesn't call people doctor who didn't go to medical school and then force you to nod along like it's real when everyone knows it isn't. Nicolae Ceausescu did that with his wife Elena. Joe Biden would never do that. Nor does Joe Biden dress like a dictator. He doesn't do photo ops in mirrored sunglasses driving a sports car to convince you that he isn't frail and senile, but instead powerful, virile, and wise. That's just not his style. If Joe Biden was a dictator, he'd be wearing epaulets and carrying a tasseled riding crop, and he isn't yet, so calm down. If he was a dictator, Biden's speeches would look like Nuremberg rallies, a blood-red backdrop, armed soldiers by his side, screaming about crushing his eternal enemies. Honestly, Biden did come close to that one time last September at a speech in Philadelphia, but it wasn't in any sense dictatory. It was necessary. As MSNBC assured us at the time, quote, Biden aimed to showcase his faith in the military apparatus and its ability to back the democratic order. See, it was about democracy, not dictatorship. No cause for alarm. He is not a dictator. A dictator would stockpile ammunition for his own bureaucrats, including his tax collectors. He'd redefine the legal code to make disloyalty to the regime the most serious crime. He'd claim dominion over the most intimate parts of his citizens' lives. He'd define what attitudes they were allowed to have about sex and religion and how to raise their families. He would even, in his final grandiose stage of dictatorship, claim ownership of their children. And Joe Biden wouldn't do that. And to prove he would never do that, Biden just this week released this video.
These are our kids. These are our neighbors. Not somebody else's kids, they're all our kids. And our children are the kite strings that hold our national ambitions aloft. It matters a great deal how we treat everyone in this country. LGBTQ Americans, especially children, you're loved, you're heard, and this administration has your back.
See? Joe Biden isn't saying your children belong to him like a dictator would. He's saying something very different from that. He's saying America's children are, quote, our children. Not his alone, ours. You share your children with Joe Biden evenly, right down the middle, with alternating weekends. You've got joint custody with Joe Biden, and you can thank heaven that you do. A nation is like a family. Every family has a head, a father. That's Joe Biden, our nation's father. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is now his fatherland. Just don't call it a dictatorship, or we'll have to issue a statement disavowing you.
You often hear people say the news is full of lies.
In Kennedy's motorcade.
239 people.
We're back. Now, there's just too much there for me to just come right off the bat. But again, it is so clear, you know, and I call him the king of sarcasm because the whole thing is sarcasm.
Right.
You know, so I'll let you start. As a gentleman, always lets the lady first
Oh, okay.
speak her mind,
All right.
and then if there's room for me after, I will speak.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you know, exactly like you said, he was pointing out the obvious, which was a producer on Fox decided they were going to just tell it like it is. A wannabe dictator is what he was calling Biden. And, of course, you know, Fox immediately sent out the apology wagon to everybody. And when it was asked, I think a day or two later in a news conference, the press secretary, Jean-Pierre, did what she always does. I don't have a comment. I don't have a comment. There's just not anything to comment about. But the American people know exactly what Tucker was saying in his video, which is we are watching the very essence of what a dictator is in the Biden administration and the Biden family. Like Tucker said, they are basically, they have the family, they have the son, the brother who has benefited from the name of Biden. We all know that there's millions of dollars that the Biden family obtained from foreign governments, China, Russia, Ukraine, and it's very much a dictator type scenario. And the producer was just doing the obvious of what the American people were already thinking.
And I'm interested in knowing more about this producer because the man knew he was going to get fired for this. Maybe he's on his way to
After
join.
10 years of service, actually.
Right. You know,
Right.
fired and he knew that was, I mean, you don't write on there wannabe dictator and thinking that Fox, which is basically is catering to the power by getting rid of Tucker, taking him off the air, he basically committed, you know,
Career suicide, actually. He did.
That was exactly what I was
Yeah.
looking for. But the biggest problem we have is the mainstream media. Mainstream media is in the pocket. You know, look at a show that I used to work with because as I was a Haiti producer, I worked a lot with 60 Minutes. I have so much respect for 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
I really thought that was a show that would really be able to show you all of this. Well, Tucker is the new 60 Minutes. The 60 Minutes back in the day would actually go and expose politicians.
Absolutely.
Expose all of these things. But what are they doing now? Where are they now? Where's the 60 Minutes that we knew? Where's the news organizations? Is it because they're now owned by by businesses and
billionaires.
and
Absolutely.
they're just protecting and they just so the that's not, news organizations should not be in the hands of multimillionaires for them to cater to what the owner wants. It's supposed to be journalism. Where is the Walter
truth.
Cronkite
Yes.
type? Where's the Walter Cronkites of today?
Right.
This is so sad that, and thank God for Tucker, for Elon Musk, and for, I don't know anybody else. I mean, the list is short of the people that are actually out there trying to give us what really is happening. So Tucker, by telling you, oh, there's no way Biden would be a dictator or want to be a dictator, because a real dictator would have all these things going on. Well, that's exactly what he's doing.
Well, yeah, it's like in the clip. He mentioned Saddam Hussein, which is who I was talking about, in last week's episode. Hussein, it was Hussein and Qusay, his sons.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were he was, talking about how, they were able to do anything they wanted to do, had millions and millions and millions of dollars at their disposal. And their people were murdered. They were, living in poverty. And he just kind of brought that as an example. And that's what we're facing now is, the American people are struggling day to day to pay their bills, to put food on the table, like I said earlier. And we're watching a sector of a community that's government, that's benefits from the government, the billionaires, the ones that are the lobbyists, the ones that are, keeping in power. Those are the only ones that are flourishing, that are making the money. And we're talking about representatives that we voted to represent us as the American people that are benefiting from being in Congress for career congressmen and women. And they've taken their power and have benefited from that power in ways that we could never benefit from. We would be put in jail if we were doing some of the things that our elected officials are doing.
We are being put in jail for the wrong reasons. Let's just jump to what I am anxiously waiting for. First of all, the Democrats have decided there will be no debate.
Right.
So I don't remember in history where the Democratic Party, even though they have an incumbent, refuses to have a debate among other Democrats to make sure that they have the right candidate for the upcoming election. So they have decided no debate. Because they know, because how can anybody defend what this administration has been doing?
Right.
But they will not be able to not have a debate when it comes to the general election.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to Donald Trump being the Republican nominee, facing the incumbent, Joe Biden, in a debate. Because everything we've talked about is going to come out. Trump is not going to hold back. I would like to see how, Mr. Senility is going to handle Donald Trump in a debate. And this is why they're trying to put Donald Trump in prison, because they know that debate will crush. Mm-hmm. They won't even have a debate among the Democrats.
No.
They won't let Robert F. Kennedy Jr. debate.
This is the first time a Kennedy has ever been blackballed by the Democrat Party.
Not only that, Biden has refused to give him Secret Service protection.
Exactly.
I mean,
a Kennedy. Of all things.
Of all things.
That just blows my mind because, they're like the Clintons. They were the untouchables of the Democrat Party side.
Exactly. But even Jimmy Carter,
mm-hmm.
when Ted Kennedy ran, Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy were enemies.
Right.
They really were they were both Democrats, but they're both enemies. When Ted Kennedy announced that he was running and requested for Secret Service protection, right away, Jimmy Carter said, yes.
Yeah.
Right away.
Absolutely.
Biden has said no,
mm-hmm.
because they know that it costs about $100,000 to $200,000 a day,
mm-hmm.
A month, about $100,000 to $200,000 a month to have the security detail that that involves you and your family to protect you. That is money being drained from the Robert F. Kennedy campaign that has to go to protection when it should be provided by the government, because he's at over 20% support.
Absolutely.
He's not a fringe candidate. He's not, fat Christie, or he's not
No.
some of these, they have no support whatsoever, these idiots that are out there being paid to run against Trump and to attack Trump. This is a guy who has over 20% of the support in the Democratic Party, and that's only because he's not allowed. He doesn't speak. They're not giving him the opportunity to be able to grow
No.
that.
No.
So this is amazing what is happening. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a dictatorship, but dictators have their weakness. Mandela was the weakness in South Africa for the ruling party. There's always out there people that are going to come out and say, no, we can't, we've had enough, like the movie
Right.
that came out and said, go out and speak in the middle of, open your window and I am pissed that I'm not going to take it anymore. This is what is happening. We're in that moment. We're living it. And I'm happy to be riding that wave with you.
That's right. And it's a big wave.
It's coming. It's not the red wave. It's not about Republicans.
No.
It's a wave of the middle class saying, F you, Biden, we're not taking this anymore. And and thank God there are people out there fighting to make it happen. We're believing what we're doing. We want to support those that are doing it. I think Elon Musk and Tucker are heroes, will be in history the heroes. And let's see what happens. But it's a dangerous times that we're in. But we are alive. And as long as we're alive, we can fight, and we are fighting. Thank you so
That's
much.
right. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I will be back with Michelle next week for another episode of Analyzing Tucker. You be good and you be safe.